Okay guys, welcome back to Direwolf's Let's Play. This is going to be episode 20. This is a continuation of episode 19. I kind of recorded 19 and 20 together, and they were very long because nuclear reactors are complicated, and there was a lot to go into. So this is episode 20, but it's really just a continuation of episode 19. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, so I placed this guy right along the path here. Hopefully that's not going to be too much energy loss. Let's stick this guy path here. So remember, energy loss occurs at a length of 20 when using the fiber optic cables. I've got the output guy here, but I'm not going to connect these just yet because I really just want to fill up this MFE real quick, and I want to feature how this works for you guys. I have my trusty EU reader? I do. So obviously there's no fuel in the nuclear reactor at the moment. No energy going through the line. Okay? If I place just one uranium fuel cell inside of here, it's going to start draining, and it's going to generate 5 energy units per tick. Okay? Let me take that out. So 5 energy units per tick for a uranium fuel cell. However, if you place 2 uranium fuel cells next to each other, it's now creating 20 energy units per tick. What the heck? That's a lot more than I expected, right? Well, the way this works is when you place uranium fuel cells next to each other, it pretty much doubles the amount of energy they produce. If you were to place 3 next to each other, what's going to happen is this is going to produce twice as much, this is going to produce 3 times as much, and this is going to produce twice as much, for a grand total of 35 energy units per tick. Okay? Because you get 10, 15, and 10, 35. You notice how quickly I took them out of the reactor. What happens is, as fuel cells are sitting in there, they're producing heat along with energy. Heat builds up in the nuclear reactor, and it starts to cause bad things to happen. It creates lava, it creates fire, and then eventually the thing explodes. Very, very big explosion. To reduce the chance of there being an explosion, you use coolant cells. Okay? Now, heat acts in a specific way. One of these uranium cells sitting in here, and let me just preface this by saying that this is super complicated, and there's a forum post on the Industrial Craft forums, and I'm kind of understanding this, but I might be getting this wrong, so if I am getting it wrong, somebody feel free to post a comment and be like, dude, Direwolf, you're stupid. Get it straight. If I place just this uranium cell in here, it's going to generate 10 heat per second. Okay? And what's going to happen is that heat is going to build up in the reactor hull, right here, the actual machine itself. If the reactor hull's machine ever reaches 10,000 heat, it'll explode. Okay? So 10 heat per second to 10,000 heat would take about 1,000 seconds. So you can imagine it won't take too long. That's about, what, 15, 16 minutes? So if I just left this uranium cell in here all by itself, in about 15 minutes, the thing would blow up. Not good. If I have these 2 uranium cells next to each other in here, it would take half as long to blow up, so 8 minutes. And with 3 uranium cells, it would take, what, 5 minutes or so? So the way we deal with that is by using coolant cells. If we place a uranium cell in there, and the more coolant cells you place around the uranium, the less heat the uranium produces. Also, the heat it produces goes into the coolant cells first, before it goes into the hull plating. So if I place a uranium cell in here, and place 1 coolant cell in here, okay, it's still producing 10 heat per second, but that 10 heat per second is going to go into this coolant cell. And the coolant cell is capable of holding 10,000 heat. Once that reaches 10,000 heat, any more heat generated is going to go into the nuclear reactor itself. So by placing a coolant cell inside, we have more time before the thing blows up. If I place 2 coolant cells next to the uranium cell, it's going to reduce the amount of heat the uranium cell is producing. And according to the forum post, it's going to produce 4 heat at each of these elements. So basically this will take 4 heat, and this will take 4 heat, for a total of 8. If I place 3 coolant cells in, each element here is going to take 2 heat. So 2 heat here, 2 heat here, 2 heat here, for a total of 6 heat. So you can see the uranium is producing less heat now because I'm putting more coolant cells around it. Finally, if I place a fourth coolant cell there, it's only producing 1 heat at each of these elements for a total of 4 heat. So this guy's producing 4, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. These guys build up their heat, and eventually these will all reach 10,000, and then it starts heating the nuclear reactor up. Okay, so let's take this stuff out again. Heat dissipates at a rate of 1 heat per second from each coolant cell. So, by placing all 4 around here, coolant cells dissipate 1 heat per second. By having these 4 in here, they're gaining 1 heat per second and losing 1 heat per second. So there's a balance. So because of this setup here, there's no heat being generated, I think. And we can see that we're only getting 5 energy units per tick still, and there shouldn't be any heat. Actually sure why this one isn't taking damage. Oh, you know why? Because it's losing a heat and gaining heat every second. So if I take this out, these guys might cool down and automatically repair themselves. There's another way. Let me head back to my base real quick. It's getting dark out too. I'm going to let that guy sit there. Oh, see, look, it just happened as I opened it up. So the coolant cells will automatically cool themselves off when there's no uranium being processed. And it's kind of like they're self-repairing. Think of it that way. So let me head back to my base and sleep through the night and grab 1 or 2 more items. Okay, I'm just building this little thingy here. I'm going to lay down some redstone. If you apply a redstone current to a nuclear reactor, actually I should probably do it like this. If you apply a redstone current to a nuclear reactor, it basically turns off the uranium cells. So by now, I'm going to guess, I'm going to build myself a quick lever real quick just to show you guys how this works. Okay, there's my on-off switch for my nuclear reactor, basically. All my coolant cells should have mostly cooled off. This is probably the first one I used, so it had built up the most heat. Now, no energy going through it, right? Place my uranium cell inside, and these guys aren't going to build up a terrible amount of heat because, like I said, they cool off at 1 heat per second, and they heat up at 1 heat per second when there's 4 of them. So there should be pretty much a balance there. Okay, I measure the energy here, 5 units of energy per tick. Flip the lever, no more energy going through, and what's happening is the uranium cell is basically shut off, but the coolant cells continue to release heat. Okay. So that's why this guy repaired itself, and if we wait a little bit, this guy should repair itself as well and basically be full. How's my MFE doing over here? Not too bad. Produced a little bit of energy while I've been talking there. Okay. So that's all well and good. The next item that there is, I can put the integrated reactor plating and the integrated heat dispensers in here too. Okay. The way integrated reactor platings work is, let's take our coolant cells out, and my redstone power is still on, so the uranium is not running at the moment. If I place integrated reactor plating next to this uranium cell, number 1, it'll store 10,000 heat. So first off, it absorbs heat as well, just like the coolant cells do. Unfortunately, it does not cool itself down as quickly as a coolant cell. It takes 10 times as long for this guy to cool down. So where this takes 1 second to lose 1 heat, this takes 10 seconds to lose 1 heat. However, it also serves as a distributor of heat. So if I place coolant cells around this guy, okay, the heat generated by this will go into this, and then it will distribute its heat evenly to the coolant cells around it. So let's turn that on and see how that works. Because there's only 1 item next to this uranium cell, it should dump 10 heat per second into this integrated reactor plating. And this will divvy up that 10 heat into these 3. So they'll probably get about 3 each. Okay, so see how they're all getting damaged there, as well as this guy? Back off. Okay, so that guy cooled down. Now it was only getting a little bit of heat, and it was distributing most of it to these guys, which is why it repaired itself quicker. These guys took more heat damage from it. Okay, The next item is this integrated heat dispenser. What this does, as far as I understand, is it also stores 10,000 heat. I don't know how quickly it cools off. I don't think that's mentioned in there. And every tick, it's going to check the heat of nearby components and try and balance their heat levels. So let's do something like this. If I were to take these guys out of here and turn it back on and let this guy take some damage. Okay? It's taking damage, it's doing its thing. Now, an important note here is that cooling will continue to happen even when the reactor is not on, quote unquote. It's only uranium cells that get disabled with redstone current. I think I mentioned that earlier, but I want to emphasize that. That should be enough. Okay, so we'll move this guy up here, and if I put this integrated heat dispenser here, see how it's distributing the heat from this guy? And it's trying to balance everything out around it. So it took some heat itself, it gave some heat over here, and it's trying to disperse the heat. So basically it's helping this guy cool off by taking the heat out of it and forcing it into everything around it. I don't know why this isn't taking damage, but maybe there just wasn't enough heat to cause damage. Alright, so that's what an integrated heat dispenser does. So I can even stick this guy in here, and hopefully they'll all cool off. Oh look, see? Now it dispensed heat from this guy over to this one. And they'll all cool off slowly over time. Okay. The one other thing that can dispense heat is the reactor itself. This reactor itself is capable of releasing heat into the environment. Alright, so look, all the coolant cells are back to being repaired now. And I believe that if they take 10,000 heat damage, they will melt and be destroyed. So you don't have to recreate coolant cells if you have a balanced reactor. Where was I? Right, so the air around a reactor can also cool it. So this guy's producing heat at the reactor level, like the box itself. Let's say if there wasn't any items in here keeping it cool, the air around it would allow it to cool down. Each block of air surrounding the reactor will provide a quarter cooling per tick. And any water around it will provide a full point of cooling each tick. And the reactor itself can vent 1 heat per pulse into the world. So pretty much, if you're only producing 1 heat per pulse here, the reactor automatically, just by its existence, reduces it by 1. And then if you surrounded the reactor with water, every block around the reactor that's touching water will cause it to reduce by 1 heat per tick as well. So, multiple ways to cool a reactor. So why are we so worried about cooling? Well, remember how I said earlier that the more uranium cells next to each other, the more heat they produce? Well, it really just makes them more efficient, because not only is it producing heat energy more quickly, it's also making it more efficient because it doesn't use the uranium any faster. So by placing these 3 uranium cells next to each other, they're producing 35 energy per tick, but it's not draining the uranium cell any faster than it would have if the uranium cell was by itself. So basically it's more efficient. A uranium cell at its lowest efficiency will produce 1 million units of energy. At peak efficiency, if it's surrounded on all 5 sides, or all 4 sides that is, right, let's pretend these cobblestones were uranium cells. Obviously that doesn't work. But if there were uranium cells on all 5 sides, this guy would be capable of producing 5 million units of energy all by himself. So the real trick here is balancing the amount of energy coming out per time. So how fast it's producing energy, right at the moment 0, because the redstone current's applied. So how quickly it produces energy, how much energy is coming out of 1 uranium fuel cell, basically how efficient the reactor is, and how long you can run the reactor before it explodes. And that's where we get into the different types of reactors. Basically, Al Blaka, the creator of this mod, came up with 5 different types of reactors. There's the Mark I reactor, which is safe. It won't ever get to the point where it'll explode. An example of a Mark I reactor, which is an extremely simple example, is something like this. This is a Mark I reactor. That guy is never going to explode, because there's more cooling going on here than there is heat production. This guy's only producing 1 heat per second on each of these coolant cells around it. It's releasing it into the air around itself. It's fine. It's never going to blow up. Obviously, that's not very efficient in terms of space usage. It's only getting 1 million units of energy per uranium fuel cell, and it's only going to produce 5 energy per second. So not very efficient, not very fast, but very safe. Those 3 components, fast, producing energy, efficient in terms of the amount of energy produced per fuel cell, and safe, the chance of the thing blowing up, you kind of have to play a balancing game, and you have to figure out how you want to lay out your reactors. There's a Mark II reactor, and they slowly build up heat, and they might explode at some point after being run for a long time, and that's why you're going to want this guy here. So what they're capable of running, or you know what, a Mark II reactor won't explode, but it will get very high in heat, so it will produce a good amount of heat around it, but it won't ever explode. And then there's a Mark III reactor, which will explode after a certain amount of time, Mark IV, which will explode rather quickly, and Mark V, which is like ridiculous energy output, but will explode very fast, and will basically only be left on for a few seconds at a time to produce huge chunks of energy. So you kind of have to, it's like a mini game almost. Build your reactor how you want it. Do I want to fill this thing up with uranium and flip it on for 5 seconds and turn it off and walk away for an hour because it's going to take that long to cool off? Maybe. But I got a lot of energy in that 5 seconds, and my uranium will last a long time. Or do I want to just, keep this thing super cool, turn it on, and walk away and never have to worry about it blowing up? Or somewhere in the middle. Most people want to be somewhere in the middle. So one more component I want to show you about this nuclear reactor, and I'll be right back to do it. Okay, so what's Direwolf going to build for us now? Why is he building more reactor platings? Good question. I'm also going to need an advanced circuit. I'm going to need one more coolant cell than I have on me. I left some of my components in the reactor back there. Okay, and let's see here. Building another one of those integrated heat dispensers. Okay. Why? You'll see in a moment, don't worry. Settle down. Let's see. Yes, I've got everything I need. Wait a second, we just saw him build this stuff a minute ago. What's he doing? Reactor chamber. That was a component that was creating the reactor, right? I just created another one. If I take my reactor chamber outside, alright, see how there's 1, 2, 3 columns and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of slots here? If you place a reactor chamber right next door, you get another column. Cool. Now I can put more stuff in here. Okay? And as you should know, all blocks in Minecraft have 6 sides, so I can place a total of 6 reactor chambers around the edge here. So with 1 reactor chamber I have 4 columns, with 2 I'd have 5 columns, 6, 7, 8, 9 columns. Okay, so you can see that this thing could get pretty big if I surround it with a lot of stuff. Obviously expensive items to make. Whoops. Okay, so now you can fit more uranium cells, coolant cells, heat dispersers, and all that good stuff in your nuclear reactor. So that's Nuclear Reactors 101. As I said, I don't fully understand all the components of how they work. I got the basic gist, I think. If I'm making a mistake, please post comments and say, hey dummy, you did it wrong, and let me show you what you did wrong. And I would be happy to correct my mistakes in the next video. It's a very complicated system with a lot of moving parts. You can imagine that you're going to basically need a pencil and paper to sit here and write down and figure out, alright, +1 energy from this, minus from this, and kind of come up with a stable system. There is a mod add-on that was created called a thermometer, and it lets you take the current heat reading. Actually, let me show it to you right now, because I want to build one and see how they work. This does not come with the basic Industrial Craft 2. You need to go download it off the Industrial Craft 2 forums. Let me go grab it and install it real quick for you guys. Okay, I just went and checked the download, and it looks like there's something a little funny on the Industrial Craft forums because I couldn't download the mod, so unfortunately I cannot show you guys the thermometer. But basically it's a little extra add-on that when you go right-click on your reactor, it tells you how hot it is. Very nice. I'd really like to see Outblock add something in here that shows you on the reactor interface how hot it is or something, but maybe that's something he'll add in the next version. But for now, you're going to kind of have to either grab that thermometer mod and measure the heat, or do a pencil and paper thing to try and figure out how much heat is being produced by your reactor. So, without further ado, I think I'm going to wrap up this Let's Play. But I want to do something really nice for you guys and show you in my test world here. This is the world where I test some of my machines before I actually go and create them for you in the Let's Play. You can see a bunch of stuff laying around here. Obviously using TMI to produce all the stuff I want. You can actually see my test bed for the crafting of the lava cells that I made in my last video here. Why don't I go get situated in a nice spot to show you something cool. Okay, I just moved over to a random location here. I'm going to give myself some reactor chambers. I'm going to give myself the nuclear reactor itself. And there we go. Bunch of uranium cells. Lay down your reactor chamber there. Surround it. So this is what a fully fledged nuclear reactor looks like. Okay? 9 across, like I said, and 6 down. Oh boy. We're gonna have a problem here, aren't we? So I just threw a bunch of uranium in there. Look how quickly this thing's heating up. This is what happens if you do not properly cool off your reactor. In fact, this is gonna be a problem. Oh boy. That's not good. This is a mod item from Equivalent Exchange that you guys will see a little bit more of later. It lets you fly. The size of the nuclear explosion is relative to how much uranium is inside of it. Look at the landscape. See all those lines and holes? All of that was produced by this explosion. Look at the size of that thing and how much trouble it caused. That's what happens if you don't properly cool your reactors, okay? Now, do you know why I didn't want to build this anywhere near my house? Yeah, big old problems. Okay. There is an item that will help reduce the size of the explosion, if there is one. It's that reinforced glass. There's also reinforced stone. I think also if you used obsidian, it would help a little bit. That's not a natural cave. But now you've seen what it looks like when there is a nuclear explosion and why you don't want to be anywhere near one. Bad things happen. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my Let's Play here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This might even be a little bit. I'm not sure if that's a part of the explosion or not this far out. Hope you guys enjoyed the Let's Play, and I will catch you all later.